Yes, indeed. We're moving on, and Akande joins us now. He's a former presidential aide. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, over the week, quite a number of things have happened. Let me start with this part, where the president announced the suspension of that 0.5% cybersecurity levy.
Yeah.
Because at the time it came through, there were those, of course, many were not happy with it. Nobody wants to just keep getting taxed over and over again. Because last year, the MAN, manufacturers also did raise the issue about surprise increase in excise duty. And then they talk about multiple taxation, of which the president himself has said several policies about tax while he was campaigning.
Right.
So what was your overall impression of how they came up with this and then eventual suspension?
Yeah. So it would seem that if you look at some of the instances that we've had in the last several months, so they go and do something that is not properly thought out, and then there is a lot of noise, and then the president comes and says, you can't do that. So it would seem to me that, do we have a situation where the president has put people in place who don't really know what they are doing? Or is it a problem of poor coordination? Because you have to give it to the president that when this noise rises to the top, he does the right thing. If you look at the cybersecurity levy very well, in the law, it doesn't say that every Nigerian will be levied. But then you have, this circular go out that suggested that everybody will be levied, causing all kinds of needless noise. So it's a very big relief when we heard from the Minister of Information yesterday confirming what we had known before, that it has been stopped. It was a big relief. But the president needs to pay attention to the issues of coordination. Such information shouldn't go out in the first instance until all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. It is giving the administration a bad name. It's not necessary to cause people's blood pressure, as it were, to rise, and then we calm it down. There are better ways to manage these things, and this is what one is hoping that the president will be alive to.
So the president on that particular table, he has tons of things to attend to.
You can imagine.
So for this kind of matter, you wonder, is he the one supposed to be looking into this matter as well, when he has several ministries, agencies, several? In fact, he's the Minister of Finance and coordinating.
Yeah.
And then you also have this committee that they also have set up at different levels.
Yeah.
To make sure they coordinate policies.
Yeah.
So that we don't have this kind of scenario. Yet, we still have this.
Now, so it's one of the points that we have made before. So you do have now some kind of economic management team, that is being led by the coordinating minister for the economy. So you will expect that this kind of decision, the imposition of the cybersecurity levy would have been discussed, behind the scene. Now, I don't know whether it was or not, but one thing that I have noticed and that I would like to say again is that you cannot have a minister supervising other ministers, even though you call the minister coordinating economy. You have a vice president whose job it is to help the president do this stuff. They need to engage the vice president a lot more to coordinate these issues. This was the experience that I had working in Haiti. For whatever it is that happened, you had, especially in the first time, you had a vice president who had the authority of the president to coordinate things. And the difference was clear between what happened in the first time and the second time, and the difference is clear in what is happening now. All of these points, having the cybersecurity levy, everybody has to pay it. Then government comes and says, no, we have to review it. What happened to the decision-making process in the first instance before it went out? I suspect that one of the things, there might be a lot of other things, is that there is not an effective coordination of the people that are involved in the economy. I think, Mr. President, you need to get your vice president working. He can have the convening authority that ministers don't have.
So here's the thing. We know that during former President Goodluck Jonathan's time, we had the coordinating minister of the economy.
Yeah.
CME, Dr. Konjo-Iweala. you had the vice president as well.
Yeah.
So she was on a job at that point in time. So they seem to have managed it.
Right.
But while you served, the VP was in charge of the economy.
Yes.
At the time. So they
For
were
the first time.
Yeah, so for the first time. So things were done differently at that point in time.
Right.
Now, at this time, we've seen that the VP is doing more. Out a lot more.
Yeah.
Could that have been factored in? And then they said, look, if we need to do stuff, let's expand this to see how we can get a lot more results.
Right.
And now we're having this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a possible scenario. And the question is that you have to be able to pinpoint, where do you need the VP playing a role that will deliver optimal results? Where is there's a problem in this administration, clearly, of coordination. And we have seen it from day one. Too many reversals, too many snaffles that are completely needless. It just points to poor coordination. I mean, it's not rocket science at all. And that's why I felt that, look, one of the things that can be done is to use, the people that we have some kind of convening authority to help the president. Because, look, I want to give it to the president. Many times when these things happen, it comes to him, he says, no, you can't do that, stop that. They reverse it. But the president shouldn't just be engaged at the level of reversal. There has to be a much more properly deployed processes whereby things are done, they check everything before they announce it.
For this kind of policy, would they have announced it without checking with the president?
Well, so if you look at the act, there are even quite a number of controversial things. So when they announced it, they said the money was going to the NSA. Mm-hmm. Now the NSA is not doesn't have the power to expend federation resources. Because the cybersecurity level will seem to be something that should go to the CRF. So there was an issue there. So the question is that who were the people that thought this? Was this properly considered? Was there a comprehensive review of these things? Clearly, there wasn't a comprehensive review of what it is. And we know that, yes, there are important cybersecurity. I mean, cybersecurity is a very important thing to be done. No doubt about that. It has to be funded, but to give the impression that, you have to levy every Nigerian at a time when the administration has said that, look, we're even trying to cut down on taxation. And you have the Oyele panel, getting into not just prescription mode, they're also getting into implementation mode to say we're going to be cutting down a lot of the double taxation. Now, at the same time, you are doing that. It just tells you that there is so much lack of coordination. And I'm hoping, many Nigerians are hoping that the president can sort this as he enters the first year of his administration.
Well, Mr. Akande, let's talk about an area of common interest. Communication. I mean, you grew to be associate professor somewhere out of this country long enough to even be leading in impacting knowledge on communication. And you talked about the snafu. And one of the issues that we know is that more than half of a problem, particularly when it involves a number of people, and in quite a number of cases, the size of the federal government of Nigeria, more than 1,500 ministries, departments, agencies, and corporations of government, is a problem of communication. You talked about the problem of coordination, which one would say is also because there is a lack of coordination, lack of communication. Lack of communication is responsible for coordination. You have led the media and communication team of the vice president before, in the vice president's office before. Consequently, you've led a media and communication team in the presidency. What is responsible for such poor coordination? What could be responsible for such poor coordination so people can understand exactly where you're coming from?
Yeah, thank you, Hayo. And that's a very important point that you're making, that poor communication is also reflected in the poor coordination. Very important point. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in the federal government administration and generally in public administration in this country is that we don't take issues of communication very seriously. Even internal communication, communication within the government is poorly done. Not to talk of external communication, communication between government and the people. Now, so a lot of decisions are taken by the relevant and the appropriate agencies of government. Yes, they have the powers to take some of these decisions, but because of the impact that those decisions have, there is a need to have some kind of central point where the announcements are made so that people can be properly carried along. Now, quite frankly, and this is not a problem of just this administration, this is the problem of public administration in Nigeria generally that I have noticed. We don't have an effective system of communication at all. At all. We don't have it at all. It's as if the people that are supposed to be doing communication, it's as if they are asking for a favor when they want to know what is going on and when they want to assert themselves. For the most part, people just think that, oh, well, we have the responsibility to do this, and we're going to go ahead and announce, not considering the overall impact that it will have first on the administration, and then the kind of reception that this might create with the people, affecting question of trust and distrust and mistrust between government and the people. So to answer your question in a summary form, there is a big problem in Nigeria's public administration. We don't regard communication the way we ought to. And that is one of the things that I came out of government observing that, look, this has to change. And we even tried, as much as possible to change it, but it is a very fundamental problem. If the president or in the state, the governor is not determined to sort it out, it will just be, up today, down tomorrow.
All right, so I want to let our viewers on DSTV know that we're going live now to the Nsara Investment Summit, which is going on. But you can flip on the other platforms, and we'll continue this all-important conversation about ensuring that policies are done right. So that was one. And as you said, not that we are complaining about the fact that they respond to policies that people feel they don't like. It's a good side. It shows that, well, okay, somebody's listening. But then this brings us to performance of some of these ministers. Right. In terms of, for instance, we know that ASU only held a meeting yesterday saying, look, nothing is going on. Government hasn't called them to reconstitute that committee 1 year on. And of course, the Minister of Education will have questions to answer. They had FEC meeting, marathon FEC meeting. So you would have thought that these kind of issues are what should come up when you have those kind of FEC meetings. Or is it that what? They screen those issues and say, no, this one cannot come up. How does it happen?
Well, normally, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is the one that sets the agenda for the Federal Executive Council meeting. Of course, the Federal Executive Council is the President's court. He runs the show the way that he chooses to. But it's the Secretary to the Government of the Federation that sets the agenda. Now, oftentimes, the agendas that come in are the ones that the memos that ministers bring to the council. So when ministers have a memo, something to propose, they send it to the Secretary to the Government of Federation. He compiles it. Decisions are taken whether this should be considered today or not, how many memos we want to deal with now. And there are times when memos are also stepped down because maybe it's not right. There are questions that have to be answered so that there can be an overall a better perception and a better discussion. But there is also in the agenda of FED, AOB, any other business. And that is where current issues that are boiling in the polity can be brought forward.
It doesn't have to be listed.
It doesn't have to be listed. It has to be brought forward by any of the members of the Federal Executive Council. So any minister can actually, at the point of AOB, raise the issue and say that this is something that is important. So that is where, for instance, if the Minister of Education or any of the ministers feel that, look, this ASU thing is coming up again, before it becomes a problem, what should we do? And quite frankly, there are times when you have very frank exchange of ideas. So, I wouldn't know why, for 1 year, as ASU has alleged, that they've not had this kind of engagement with the federal government, but I mean, from the experience of that, what we know, it's often the case that people don't respond properly until somebody is banging the table. I think that's just a cultural problem that we have to deal with as a people.
So I know that during the former president's time, he did complain that he's doing a lot, but his issues were not going out there.
Yeah.
So what could have happened at that point?
Well, a lot of issues could have happened. Like I said, I don't think that the public policy administration in Nigeria, I don't think it is properly arranged to communicate effectively. It's very poor. It's very poor. You see a lot of people who are in charge of communication trying to nose around to find out what is happening, and it seems as if people are doing them a favor. That has to change. That has to change because
let's expand that a little bit, because what we've seen, and you could point it out too, if it's not the way it is, it comes across as though a lot of politicians, when they have their media or communication people come on board, they just have them as though they're just hangers on. We don't see a deliberate plan. I mean, in some other climes, when you go for instance, the Democratic conventions, several other scenarios, meetings, you will see where they are deliberate about this is how the media, this is what media's role here. We're reaching this to the media. There's a platform set up for media people when you're setting up so that you can get short and not cover. You could see people are thinking about the public who are represented by the media. But in this case, we don't see those kind of things.
We don't see it, and you wonder what the problem is. And my experience has been that, when you even try to get people to understand that, they think that you're asking for a favor. It's the part that I don't really understand. Look, this is we are practicing a democratic system of government. So you are responsible to the people. The people must know. I remember there was a time, even at FEC, when some ministers said, look, after FEC, every Wednesday we go out and address the media. That must we do that? Said, we have to always, he said, do we have to always, give information to the press? And it was the vice president that was presiding. The vice president told them, he said, put it point blank, that we must always have a press briefing. So some ministers were saying that. We always have to go out and so that is just an indication.
No wonder many of them were never always
people
responding.
Don't understand that. Look, this thing is going to have an impact on the president who hired you, and that's why I said that. Look, it will take the president in the country and governors in the states to change the format of public communication, especially in governments in Nigeria, and it's something that we have to do. Otherwise, you're going to have that gap between the people and the government widening.
Mr. Akande, I'm enjoying the conversation you're having with Chamberlain, and one of the things that the issues raised here thus far is that of believability. I mean, one of the things, it just reminds me of a strategy that I observed or perceived from the Babangida government of the 90s. They put out a policy just to see how people will react, and then when the reaction is not too bad or it's balanced, they keep it. If the reaction is too caustic, they withdraw it. Do you think that this government could also be flying a kite with some of these initiatives, some of which they put out, then they reverse or they reduce and all of that? Do you think that is something, it could be a strategy that this government is using one way or the other?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't think so. Because if you look, for instance, at the cybersecurity levy, which we started talking about this morning, it was the Central Bank of Nigeria that put out that information. Now, normally, the Central Bank of Nigeria is an autonomous body, okay? So you are not supposed to have a situation where the president is openly giving the Central Bank of Nigeria instructions, because by his act, he's supposed to be autonomous. And there are specific instances in the act where the governor and the central bank management must get the president's approval. For instance, when they wanted to change the naira and all of that. So I don't think that in this particular instance they were trying to check out what it is, tease out the information. I think it was just a problem of coordination.
Which also leads my apologies. Which also leads to this issue. Every president, every governor, expectedly, has senior special assistants or some kind of officers that are supposed to relate with these ministries, departments, and agencies, be it autonomous or not. At least we know that there is some agent, some officer of the president that is supposed to be speaking to election matters. In this case, they're talking to the to INEC, just to understand what is going on and all of that. So if the president has SAs or SSAs or whichever way you want to call them, dealing with these agencies, should we be having this kind of what some people may refer to as policy somersaults if the SAs are doing their jobs?
Yeah, I mean, very, very good point. What I have found out, Ayo, is that in many instances, even the SAs, even in the presidency, to my surprise, in many instances, they don't even know what is going to happen. So a lot of the times they are trying to catch up because many of these agencies just go and do their thing without considering the impact that it will have on the president. I remember that when we were there, we had to form a presidential communication team, that was then headed by the vice president. We used to have meetings once a week. The vice president, chaired those meetings, and then you had the Minister of Information, you had the special advisor, the senior special assistants, and other people that their work has to do with media and communication, sit around the table and try to figure out and try to be proactive. We had that for a little while because part of the problem that we noticed was that, look, even the SSAs and the SAs for communication have to be catching up. A lot of the times they hear the news themselves when it is out there. And so we had to put
Doesn't that also question, my apologies, Mr. Akande, doesn't that also question the collaboration initiatives of the federal government of Nigeria? Collaboration. Should any ministry, department, or agency put out anything without letting the president know he is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, autonomous agency or not? So doesn't that question collaboration?
Yeah. So the way it works, Ayo, is that the president, and I think Chamberlain made that point. There are many things on the president's table, huge, which is why he needs a chief of staff and people, principal private secretary, whatever it is, that we just sit down because the paperwork is humongous. So a lot of things will go to the president, but the media managers, the communication advisors, we have no idea about until it's out. So that is why we talk about coordination. In the instance of the presidency, it has to do with the office of the president. Who is the chief of staff? Who is the principal private secretary? How do they, perceive their job? How should there be some kind of a system where things that have important public implications are shared on an effective system with the special advisors on communication? There are instances where some ministers, once they get an approval from the president, they will go straight to the special advisor and say that, look, I've just gotten this approval, and then the special advisor will say, okay, this is an important thing we have to tell the people. But there are also instances of where people get the approval and they just go on their own.
Okay, so when you say, yeah, my apologies. When you said that the president or the governor at any time have to put their feet down to ensure that this issue of communication happens, natural question. At the risk of the executive, the head of the executive, being authoritarian or asserting too much power, what does he do or how does he go about it?
Well, so in the management of his own aides, there is nothing like authoritarian because he is the one that appointed those aides to help him or her, if he's a female principal. So there is nothing authoritarian about it. The principal, the president or the governor, is the one that was elected, is the one that people will hold responsible. So if he puts his foot down to people that he appointed, that this is how I want the job done, I don't think they have a lot of options not to follow through. I think what we normally have, the problem that normally happens, is that the people who work directly with the principals, at times have issues with the people who do the media and communication. So that, there are all kinds of games that are played. So the onus is still on the principal, who will say, look, this is the level of the importance that I want my media aid to play. When I was the media advisor to former Vice President Shibaju, there is no meeting I couldn't attend. I could walk into any meeting. I could open his door. I could go to his office at any time. And that helped the way I did the job, as the media aide to the Vice President. But I found out that not everybody has that kind of access, whether working with other principals. And that explains the reason why the communication of government policies at times become very rowdy.
Coming from a state that had a lot of media, you'd have thought they should be able to handle these things better.
Well, so even if you look at the current presidency, he has two special advisors, on communication and media, two very important, quite hardworking people. So in terms of the personality, in terms of the personnel, they're there. The question is, how effective are both of them working with the front office of the president? How effective are they working with the ministers? How effective are they working with the secretary to the government of federation? That is what has to happen.
So do we then assume that, okay, maybe they are still learning the ropes.
Right.
Maybe the second, third year, they might be better. Because if the president changes cabinets, they'll be gone on the start again.
Hopefully, I mean, I think that they will learn, with the process. But, in the case of the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, he has been there since 2019. So I imagine that he has learned quite a lot. And if he wanted to, he can actually assert himself much more in the process. He came out saying that was what he was going to do. But there's a lot of snafu, that can be fixed. A lot of errors that can be easily fixed, and all of these things have an impact on the image, President.
Okay, so we'll be looking at least to see if in the days, I think hard to say years ahead, because we had one of the APC officials, APC Professionals Forum, who was saying Nigerians need to wait, maybe give him the president 2 more years before they can start feeling some of those policies. And but we're quick to remind him, well, much as he may be of that opinion, but the president himself did say, look, I sought for this, don't pity me, because he's expected to fold the sleeves and what do we always say, hit the ground running, as they say.
Yeah.
But the onus now lies on his lieutenants. All those other ministers who are there, they are the ones who should fly with those policies. And if they're not seen doing the right things, you'll get this kind of backlash.
Absolutely.
So who knows? I think next time I will look at the performance of the ministers and see who's doing what. We'll look at those ministries one after the other and see if the scorecard is what Nigerians expect. Thank you for coming on, Lalo Akande, former presidential aide.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.